Good Friday. With the exception of New Year's Eve, this is the highlight of the year in Antigua. For the restaurants, it's very slow during the day, but at night, especially for those of us in or near Parque Central, it is a godsend. At 3 in the morning, preparations begin for the mock trial and sentencing of Christ. There are people high up in the church community that get to play Roman soldiers, Pontius Pilate, and other actors in the drama. At 7 a.m., a sculpture of Christ carrying his crucifix is carried through the carpeted cobblestone streets on the shoulders of his worshippers until early afternoon, when it's replaced by another of Christ being laid to rest. At 4:30, Antigua is adorned with black crepe paper as thousands of people, burning incense and dressed in black, crowd the streets. The best procession is led by a man bearing a large crucifix, with hundreds of cucuruchos following, carrying black banners and standards engraved with the final words of Christ and pronouncements of God. Sculptures representing archangels, the Stations of the Cross, and the apostles precede Jesus in his coffin through the streets, where multitudes pray quietly. Christ is laid to rest in a church very late at night, and every year hundreds of people camp outside that church till 3 in the morning when the doors are opened. I did it with the wife once the first year. We sat with our backs to the door so we could be the first ones in. At around 4, a monk on the inside slid one of the bolts open, putting us all on edge. Maybe 10 minutes later, they opened another. Half an hour after that, another. And finally, at 5, the huge doors creaked open and we bolted. Down the vaulted hall, we ran like children and leaped up into a niche at the very end, the best seats in the house. Then, we waited even more. The place was filled with a dark, silent mass of people, all waiting patiently. I kept falling asleep, and my wife, who was my girlfriend back then, shook me awake. It was against the rules to sleep, I guess. That gave the night a hazy, dreamlike unreality. I've been up till 5 many times in the past, but not after working in my own restaurant, so it was very different for me. When Jesus in his glass coffin finally crowd-surfed into the church, all was silent except for the clicking of hundreds of cameras, their flashes sparkling in the vast gulf of darkness below us. That coffin slowly made its way across a sea of worshipers toward us, and it was mesmerizing. When it arrived at its resting place until next year, there was a tremendous peace that settled over all of us and remained all the way home. My wife likes to do it every other year or so, but I only did it the once. I didn't need to do it again. This year, she'd try to drag me along again, and I would politely decline. After work, all I would want is my pillow. After carrying a 7,000-pound float and then coming back to work, I'm bushed. This year, my wife and all her family came over to make an alfombra in front of the restaurant. There were no diners at all, so I could help. We put sawdust down to level the cobbles and then nailed together a square of 2x8s and used a 5th board as a bridge. We had bags of sawdust that had been dyed blue, red, yellow, purple, and green, and pine needles, corosos, bougainvillea, chrysanthemums, and carnations. The girls had cardboard stencils they'd bought, and we all drank beers in the hot sun while putting it together. Local kids came by asking if they could help, and we had a great time. It wasn't one of the best, not by a long shot, but it was nice enough. A few times, tourists came by to look at our menu and then checked us on TripAdvisor, and all said the same thing. It should be called Psycho Mesa. And they walked on. My wife and her sisters, who also speak English, looked at each other whenever they heard that, then looked at me. They didn't ask, they just assumed I'd lost my temper again, and it was pointless to talk about it, as the damage had already been done. Well, I thought sadly, at least the locals still love us. Then my waiter came out to tell me I had a phone call. I paused in front of the fan for a moment before going to the phone behind the bar, loving the cold air, and when I said hello into the phone, I got the shock of my life. "Hi, Johnny," said a woman's voice. I didn't recognize it at first. It had been almost 7 years, and a lot of women had called me since then, and they all expected me to know them, so all I could do was wait until she gave me a clue. "Long time." "How've you been?" I asked, hoping she wouldn't notice. "I've been good. Well, no, I've been bad. But things are a lot better now." "Oh, that's good. I looked you up on Google just now, out of curiosity. I love your website. Wow, and you finally got published, huh? And a restaurant, too? Checked out your menu. Impressive. Thanks." "Who the hell was it?" "Listen," she said, "you really surprised me. I'm sorry I didn't know you had it in you to do all that. I wish I hadn't, gone and fucked it up like that." I stared at the corner of the wall where a tiny spider sat by its recent catch, waiting until he was hungry enough to eat it. "Hello?" she asked. "I'm here," I said. "Sorry, my waiter was asking me something." "I bet you weren't expecting a call from me, of all people." "Well, it is a surprise. I was just thinking about you and looked you up, and it's overwhelming what you've done with yourself, and now all I can think about is how badly I want your cock in my mouth." The complete insincerity in her voice made me realize who it was, all of a sudden. Elizabeth. The girl who talked me into coming here in the first place. The con artist who tried to trick me into killing her coke-dealing, psychotic ex-boyfriend. The one who tried to have me killed when I wouldn't. When I wised up and left her and went off with a Guatemalan chick instead, she was calling me. Out of the blue. "How did you get my number?" I asked. "It's on the homepage of your restaurant's website." "Oh. So, what you been up to?" I asked, trying to remain calm. "Oh, geez, it's been a roller coaster. You sure you have time to hear it?" Maybe not." I looked at my wife outside, who was looking at me, frowning. "It is Good Friday, after all." "Oh, yeah, it is, isn't it? Been so long since I was in Antigua. Semana Santa. That was fun the first couple of times, but it got old real quick." "Yeah, I suppose, but the restaurant's busy." "Lie, but so what?" "Okay, well, I'll let you go then. Tomorrow will be slower. Can I call you then?" "Sure." "Okay. Bye, sexy man." I think she waited to see if I would say bye, foxy lady, like I used to, since there was a silence for a moment, but I wouldn't if you paid me. I waited to hear that click and went outside. "Who was that?" my wife asked. "No point in lying." "A ghost," I said. "Who?" "Elizabeth." Pause. I watched her getting mad and wondered if it was at me. "Why?" she asked. "Why is that bitch calling you?" "She saw the number on the website and called me." "Take that number down right now." "We get reservations because of that website." "Oh, I suppose it's okay then if my ex-boyfriends start to call me. You won't mind?" "Honey, I'm not happy that she called." "Do I look happy? I want to see your phone." "What for?" "To see how many times you talked to her." "I've never talked to her, not in years. She just called me." "What's happening?" one of her sisters asked, I think to remind us that we were arguing outside in the public eye. My wife answered under her breath in Spanish. "This is why I don't ever tell you anything," I said, which I think is what they call gaslighting, "because you'll jump down my throat every time." By the look on both her sisters' faces, it seemed like they'd vouch for what I just said. She grumbled a bit and then went back to the alfombra, and I poured myself a stiff drink.